Ladies and gentlemen, Expat Partners is happy to bring to you the first part of our series, COVID-19 and Immigration 2020 and beyond, where we talk to various experts from the industry to get their views on this subject. My name is Rohan Kamath. I am Director Asia with Expat Partners. Today, we are in conversation with Anuj Sarin, Head of Global Immigration Management Services for Wipro Technologies. Anuj is a veteran in the immigration industry with well over 20 years of experience in it, played different roles. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Rohan, for having me, and good morning or a good evening to everyone, depending on whichever part of the world you are and taking a look at this video. And I hope you and your families are safe in these tough times.
Thank you. So without further ado, let's get to it, Anuj. We are all excited to be asking you our questions. So the first question I have for you, what are the three main challenges you saw due to the COVID-19 crisis, and what has Wipro learned from that?
All right. So, the COVID-19 situation landed up catching everybody off guard. Okay, nobody expected this kind of a situation to arise where almost simultaneously the entire globe is going into a shutdown mode, through different ways and means. You had lockdowns, you had airport closures, you had restrictions on movement of people, both domestically and internationally. So that's not something that anybody was really prepared for or had anticipated that such a situation could arise globally and simultaneously. So being able to respond to that in itself was one of the biggest challenges, okay, that were faced. And from an immigration perspective, because of that, a ton of more challenges started to crop up, which predominantly focused around how do we comply to immigration regulations in these situations, and what is the expectation for us. For example, you had a business visitor who had traveled, and all of a sudden that person could not return back to the home country simply because flights to his or her home country were completely suspended. How do you keep that person in that country? How do you make sure that that person is compliant? Okay. Or when you look at work permits, for example, work permits come with their own sets of restrictions and expectations, okay, and compliance requirements. Now, you had someone who was working from a particular location, and all of a sudden that location was shut down. So you needed to make an alternate arrangement for that person to work, which most companies responded to by allowing blanket work from home. But blanket work from home comes with its own compliance challenges. Okay, is it allowed? Is it not allowed? Do you need to notify the authorities? You do not need to notify the authorities. Processes and systems were not geared for letting the authority know at this kind of a scale that this has happened and the person's going to be working from home. So for example, if I take the US, H-1B workers authorized to work in that office address which you mentioned on the H-1 application. Okay, now you've got the guy to work from home. What do you do about LCA compliance? Right, so a lot of those challenges started cropping up. People who are there on maybe other short-term work permits which have limited validities or durations of stay, non-extendable. You have people with those work permits sitting across various countries, and now you don't have an alternative status to which you could look at converting these people to, because in some countries the legislations won't allow for it at all. Right, so now what do you do to try and keep those individuals safe? What are your alternatives? Could I look at converting to a tourist status, if possible, first and foremost? Okay, if not possible, how do I look at getting this person out safely from that country, as in when the situation improves and the skies open up? So, these were some of the challenges that cropped up, okay, in terms of, the impact of COVID. Now, there are a host of other challenges also, which obviously are there. Okay, a lot more specific and nuanced. But yeah, these are some of the key challenges which cropped up to making the position of the immigration professional such that at this huge scale, balancing out between business needs, compliance, and making sure that the employee is safe. So, a combination of these coming up at short notice with how best we could look at balancing this out to make sure business continues, to make sure the employee is safe, and to make sure we are still compliant with the legislative requirements of that particular country was amongst the biggest challenges which an immigration professional would have had.
Thank you. Makes a lot of sense and very, very real. So the second question I have for you, Anuj, is how did Wipro manage the lockdown and ensure delivery to customers? You've covered part of this in your first answer, but is there anything you'd like to add?
So again, when you look at it, like I said, it was how do you draw a balance between business, employee safety, and compliance. So a slew of measures obviously were taken in place to ensure that all three are met. So from a business perspective, the business side of it, when you look at, okay, enabling work from home or enabling from another office, for example, which may not have been under a lockdown or a quarantine, was the immediate response. Now, enabling that itself comes with so many challenges, and other restrictions. If you see in India, for example, if you're part of an STPI or an SEZ, there are huge restrictions as far as the equipment is concerned. Okay, it has to be part of the STPI or the SEZ. So, that obviously a different team took on that challenge and made sure that it was made possible to move the necessary equipment to alternate locations, be it a house or somewhere, the individual employee's house or somewhere else. Okay, so that they kind of took over. But now in terms of immigration compliance, if I look at, okay, again, country specific, we saw what the specific requirements of each and every country is, where we have our professionals. Okay, and then said, okay, you know what, how is it that we can make sure that each of the individual is compliant to that specific requirement? Okay, so be it let's say, notifying the authorities, okay, be it filing necessary amendments if required by the law of that particular country, okay, or if any alternate mechanisms were available to make sure that, uh, on record, okay, on documentation, on paper, okay, we have told the authorities the correct thing. We have very clearly communicated to the authorities that, what, this person is no longer at this address, but is working out of this particular address. Okay, so that's how we dealt from an immigration perspective of it. Okay, then the third is in terms of travel. Okay, before certain countries shut down their airspaces, there were announcements which were made. So, you figured out who all are there in a particular country, let's say on a business visa. And we said, what, is there a possibility and can we bring them back before the actual lockdown has occurred? So you went and identified such resources. Okay, you took up, okay, you made sure you figured out whether or not it is feasible and practical to bring that person back, both from a logistic perspective as well as from a business perspective. all right, and then you enabled that so that the individual is not left stuck in a foreign country. So it was a concerted effort which had to be undertaken by various different teams, just to ensure that business does not get impacted.
Super. Thank you, Anuj. The next question I have for you, from the change in the work process during lockdown, do you feel this will bring a permanent change to the way things work in the immigration industry?
I would believe yes, and if you see, there are plenty of organizations now which have started questioning the need to have a physical office to have the employee work. I mean, Twitter has come back and said, hey, you know what, 100% of my workforce is going to be working at from home. TCS came back and said, you know what, in X number of years, 75% of our workforce is going to be working from home. So on and so forth. Different companies, have come up, set different targets. So obviously that is going to have an impact as far as immigration is concerned. Okay, not just in terms of the actual immigration process, because here now you're going to be looking at not having a physical space where a ton of employees sit and work out, but very, very individual specific places. Okay, now when someone is working out an office premise, if there is a change in that, it's much more easier to track. But now when someone is working from home, how do you keep a track of whether that person continues to be at that location or has moved into another location? Or it could be as simple as moving from house number 10 to house number 15 on the same street. But you know what, that construes a change. So those challenges are going to come up. So the way you track all these compliance requirements are going to see a significant change in how things are going to be working from an immigration perspective. Second, the relevance of immigration may also potentially come down a little bit. I mean, if you take a look, earlier what was thought as an essential reason or a rational why a person has to travel, that definition probably is completely changing. You we felt that business is best conducted or most successful when done face to face, right? Which is why a lot of times, when you're negotiating a contract, okay, you and the customer wanted to sit in front of each other across a table. But if I take a look at the example of Reliance, we are talking of probably in excess of 10-15 billion dollars, okay, of business transaction happening during this time of COVID,
Totally
right?
virtual.
So it's virtual, Facebook, Pacific Partners or something, I'm forgetting the exact name. Okay, today I was reading some other company wanting to was it Microsoft, I believe, wanting to look at investing in the Reliance Geo platform. You're having these negotiations. Neither anyone from those companies can come to India, neither can anyone from India go to those meet officials of those countries in whichever part of the globe they may be. But then billions and billions of dollars of business transaction has happened. Now when a $1 billion transaction can happen, okay, if you're, why can't a multi-million-dollar transaction happen, okay, remotely? So that's probably the new one of the new news which is coming out in these points of time. Thirdly, from an individual perspective or point of view, would I really want to do an international travel in these points of time? Okay, or would I try and avoid international travel at this point of time? So that's a personal aspect to it, while a business necessity or a business need may be there. Okay, but then there is a personal aspect also which comes into a picture. Okay, so you know what, when you take a look at a combination of these, I do believe it is going to result in a completely new manner in which we conduct business in future. Future will only tell to what extent it changes, but yes, I do believe a change is imminent.
Thanks, Anuj. I know we are running short of time, but I have two questions that I have to ask you before we close. And
Mhm.
let's see how quick we can finish these. The first one is, do you see an increase of health and safety protocols for assignments abroad?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. I mean, since the COVID situation broke out, if you see, one of the first reactions of the organizations were towards employee safety and protecting the employees. A slew of measures got announced, in terms of usage of office, social distancing, wearing of masks, etc. I mean, WHO and the Indian Medical Council, IMCR or
ICMR.
something,
ICMR.
ICMR, right? They have come up with guidelines which were quickly adopted, if not exceeded by organizations. In our industry, it is the person, okay, who is the key, right? You don't have a person, you don't have any business that you can do or any work that can be done. So companies focus and attention towards employee security and safety is going to be paramount, and I don't think any company or organization is going to look at compromising on that.
Absolutely agree with you. My last question for you today, Anuj, is about where do you see global mobility going for the remaining months of 2020 and 2021 onwards?
So again, future at this point of time is a little fuzzy and difficult to predict. But I was saying, there is a new normal which is getting defined out in terms of how business could be conducted. There is the personal aspects of coming. While let's say I might be ready to travel in my, if I have to take a decision on my own. Okay, but what about my family? Okay, is my family going to be able to is my family going to allow me to travel? So that pressures are also going to be there. So it's probably a little early to predict, okay, what exactly or how exactly it's going to pan out in the future. Okay, but yes, what definitively is going to happen is a significant change to the way things work is going to be there. Mobility professionals will have to look at being able to quickly adapt, not just the process but themselves, to be able to meet these challenges which would land up cropping up in the future.
So, thanks so much, Anuj. A very, very insightful chat with you today. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to those of you
Thanks,
who
Rohan.
pleasure is ours. And to those of you who are watching, we've enjoyed bringing this chat with Anuj Sarin to you. And thank you for spending this time with us. Please send in your feedback to us on contact@expatpartners.com. CONTACT at EXPATPARTNERS.com. Thanks and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.